Welcome to Allegedly Higher, where humor, insight, and passion collide with higher education. Hosted by Dr. Erin and Dr. Candice. Join them as they dive into headlines, interview leaders, and challenge norms. From dismantling systems to championing equity, this podcast is your go-to for transforming the ivory tower. Let's get into it.
Hello, welcome to our first official episode, second official episode of Allegedly Higher, the podcast where we dissect higher education through a human-centered lens with a pop culture flair. I am your host, Dr. Erin, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Dr. Candice Jackson. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I am doing well. We had a slow start to our Friday morning.
I know, right? It's always the way.
I was scrambling until you said, "Can you give me an hour?" It's like perfect. It was perfect. I barely know what day it is, but that's great. That is really great.
Yeah. That's why we work well
Uh,
together. We we
yes.
both need time. We both need time and grace. Yes.
So what was the highlight since we're on Friday? What's the highlight of your week this week?
Well, so it doesn't sound like it, but I had my professional evaluation yesterday, and turns out that I did more than I thought I had. And she was like, "But you forgot this, you forgot this, you forgot this, you forgot this." Um, and so it was really nice to have an evaluation where you felt seen. And so we don't have enough of those, I think. So that was a highlight of my week. And then the
Oh,
fact that it is now Friday. Um, I'm getting ready to do some other things as well that'll come out later. But yeah, so it's been a good week. Oh, and I started working on my novel again. So that was great.
oh, I thought that was what you was talking about gonna come out later, but now
No,
I don't know.
no. Some other thing. Well, so I have so many irons in the fire. So we're doing a concept trailer film for with the production company I work for. So that's going to be exciting. We're doing that this weekend. So
Well,
yeah.
good.
What about you?
I,
What's going on?
I asked you that. I was about to say, I asked you that question. I have no idea what's the highlight of my week. Um, I'm still recovering from Easter. Easter
Ah,
is my favorite holiday,
hmm
and it's always no matter what happens. It's we literally walked out of church, me and my my two good friends, and they're walking out after a children's church filled with nice, cute little kids.
yes, yes.
And we all walk into our car like looking so ran through. And we like, why did we forget that Easter comes every year and we're all wore out? Like I'm trying to convince her that you can't go home and cook a Easter feast because you've been with me the whole weekend. And I know I can't come home and cook an Easter feast. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. I get a text. She taking a nap in Target parking lot. I hope she hears this. Um, if she says nothing, I know she didn't listen. She takes a nap in Target parking lot and proceeds to make us dinner reservations because I had gone home to see my family on Saturday and I
Mhm.
knew I wasn't going back that day just for I wasn't gonna get the food. If I had to eat a sandwich after church, I was gonna be happy. But all in all, yeah, I'm still recovering from Easter, but I do think the highlight of my week is that I officially launched my group coaching program called Revive and Thrive for social impact leaders to address burnout and career and all well-being and all of these things. So I finally put it out to the world. I had been launching it behind the scenes, but I'm excited to continue to promote that.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I love it. But I love the nap in Target parking lot because if you don't feel safe in a Target parking lot, the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. And so
This is a friend who can sleep anywhere. So,
one of those.
she's listening. She knows who she is. I'll get a text, but it's okay.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I think it's a great skill to have.
Mhm.
um, so let's go. So w- our segment of We Outside, we're taking suggestions if we can have another, but we term this segment We Outside because sometimes higher ed has a tendency to ignore everything else and stay in our own little academic bubble, but
Mhm.
the world moves on quite rapidly.
Right.
And I know when I was formerly working there, I couldn't really discuss all the news topics that I
Mm,
wanted to discuss because nobody
yeah.
in my office knew anything about what I was watching, listening to, or reading. And so We Outside is going to yeah, we're going to explore some pop culture issues. It's up and down our timelines,
Mhm.
share through our TikTok. Someone on here, not me, is an avid TikTok
Lurker. I'm
lurker. Yeah, she don't post nothing, but she lurks. And
Yeah.
of course on our news feeds.
Yes. The big thing now is Cowboy Carter. So, I I've really enjoyed this as a um sort of ethnomusicology musical, journey. And it is definitely a Beyonce album. It is definitely a Beyonce album with some country twang. So now, now let me say this. Don't y'all come for me. The Beehive better not come for me. But no, I really there's some that are just amazing, and amazing vocals, amazing song choices, duets. My the Miley Cyrus and duet is just amazing. I love that one. What about you?
That was
Which
my
one is your
favorite too. That
favorite?
yeah, that was my favorite. I think I'm always a behind the scenes girl, so I like after it's over, breaking down what it means and who worked here and who was there. But I do think the Miley Cyrus one was my favorite. Like I can go back and listen to it and appreciate
Mhm.
it differently.
Yeah.
Um I know they might be talking about partners or spouses, but when I hear it, I think about my good friends and my line sisters
Mm,
who as much as they may get on my nerves, I love them to death, but I'm always gonna be they rider always.
yeah.
So
I think that that's important. You gotta have that one or maybe two. I have the one I can count them on my hand, and they know I'll fight for them till there's blood on the floor. May not talk to
yep.
them for months at a time, but they know when I get the call, I'm there. It doesn't, and vice versa. Like, so I think that one touched me. And I guess we all coming for Jolene. Jolene been rocking for, this long. We all got to come for Jolene. Um, I'm, first, Becky with the good hair. Now it's
I
Jolene's.
mean, her just recording word for word, Jolene would not have worked
Right.
in this time. So I think it's fitting. She
Mhm.
brought it up. It was a very different message. It
Yeah.
was I don't even think if a woman to woman like couldn't be
Mm.
recorded, like couldn't be covered word for word in this day and age because it's
Oh
just not,
no.
it's not
Especially the
happening.
line in Woman to Woman with she said clothes and shoes on his feet. I buy. No, nobody's singing that these days. Nobody's
They
admitting
doing it, but ain't nobody singing
that.
about it.
No, nobody's going to admit that. No. I also love the fact that she brought in Black country artists, and so in this, what it's allowing people to do is to kind of research and reclaim the place in country music. Um, and so that is important. It is important to talk about Black country artists. It's important to talk about Charlie Pride. It's important to talk about these things. And if Beyonce is going to be in this way the sort of an ethnomusicologist through her work, then it's very important work. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think so. I'm not in the official beehive. I do appreciate her work ethic, her leadership, like
Mhm.
the perfectionist,
Yes.
the way she just doesn't just throw a song together. Like some of the some of the artists, she's
Mhm.
very strategic about
Yeah.
her work. I think that's what I admire about everything. So I love her behind the scenes, even though she didn't give it to us on this album.
Mhm.
But I like the way she just plays different things
Yeah.
that you have to go and research it. So I went to research and I forgot her name already. The lady who did the intro in Spaghetti. She was the first black
Linda
country singer to
Martell.
sing at the Grand Ole. What's the name?
Linda Martell.
Yes. I went
Mhm.
back to research her. I posted yesterday a um a story from and I think I saw the episode, but it was about how they talked about the banjo, of how it's not American, it came from our African roots, and we created bluegrass and that started country. So I love this history. At the
Mhm.
same time, you can't at the same time they're stripping it away from schools.
Oh, right.
Beyonce comes in and forces us to
Right.
to do that. And so I love that she brought in John Baptiste, who wrote
Mhm.
American Requiem. It
Mhm.
was like I love Renaissance. I love the way it doesn't skip a beat, like it just flowed one song together. I didn't listen to it as much,
Yeah.
but this one for me deserved a second and third immediate listen, and I can go back to and play it through.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I'm also I'm really glad I love seeing the evolution. The thought now, if all of the young women and men who love Beyonce, who are in that college age, if they could put this much research that they're doing for TikTok to do their TikTok breakdowns, if they could put that much research into their assignments, I'll be even happier. And I
Because
will
it's a
get
whole history album from the Blackbirds. You learn about the Little Rock Nine, and you learn about Paul McCartney. Like from top to bottom, like it was very much a historical piece. And because this is the intersection of higher ed and academia and pop culture, I wanted to lift up, and I haven't read it, but Charlemagne has lifted this up, and I
Mhm.
put it on my he did this actually before the country album came out. Do you know Alice Randall?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, so her book on what is the name of it now? My Black Country. She is
Mhm.
a Harvard educated novelist. What's her
Right.
other books that you've read? This is
I
my
think
first. You're the English person on here. I'm the STEM person. So you're gonna get two different perspectives on this podcast.
well, I know she's also, she writes songs, and I think the one that I have, if I can be honest, as I'm looking it up right now, because I don't want to mess it up, um, is yeah, The Wind Done Gone. That's the one. Yes. Now,
Okay.
okay, so the interesting part about the and it comes from the perspective, and it's been so long since I read it, but from the perspective of Prissy, in a way, it kind of highlights Prissy and the black characters of Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind, which
Okay.
don't kill me. Gone with the Wind, of course, as many of my friends know, is one of my favorite movies, for
We
various
don't hold it
reasons.
against you. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, you know that
We
about
don't
me.
hold it against you.
No, but it's because of Hattie McDaniel and what she's able to do,
Yeah.
and the back and behind the scenes. And actually, the book isn't. Of course, it's problematic, but Hattie McDaniel and Oscar Polk and Butterfly McQueen in those roles um, really did a lot more than what it looks like they have. And so what Alice Randall does is kind of does a reimagining of it and calls it The Wind Done Gone. She went through a lot for that piece. So yeah. And then
Yeah.
she started
I'm looking
switching.
forward to reading this book or listening to the book
Yeah.
after but actually before the album, and she highlights um her actual journey because she's been working, she lives and works in Nashville in
Hmm.
country music. And so she's breaking down historical pieces of how Black people, especially Black women, made an impact there. So I think it's a very timely piece, and I'm happy for all this African American history to be front and
Hmm.
center. They
Right.
are trying to erase every piece. You can't. Y'all can't. It's gonna come
You,
back up.
right. You can't. And the thing about it is when we teach in these silos of this is American literature, this is African American literature, this is, Black history. This is American history, and we have to deal with the good and the bad. And I think and highlighting what those contributions are, um not they are not small things. You can't be you can't be a contributor when you are an originator, and
Hello.
so we are dealing with trying to reclaim the recognition of how this music, American music, is Black music, is our music, jazz.
Mhm. And I think her third, to
Yeah.
get off of Cowboy Carter, I think her third, if the rumors are correct, everybody's been pretty much right. Well, either the rumors of his third act is gonna be Destiny Child reunion, which I doubt it. I think the third act is rock and roll,
Probably.
reclaiming that. And I think that's what she did for house music. That's what she did for
Mhm.
country, and she did have a lot of rock and roll, a little bit of rock and roll on this album, like in our real conversations, our daily conversations,
Yeah.
unedited, uncensored.
Yes,
we
exactly.
talked
Good.
about how our love for Shania Twain did the same thing.
Mhm.
She was
Yeah.
very much rock, and like
Mhm.
she created her own lane in country,
Yeah.
and she's my favorite country artist because of it.
Mm. Yeah, I think we all have to I remember a time when good music made the radio, and it wasn't necessarily separated by race.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
there
achy breaky between achy breaky heart and back that thing up where
well, look, in my day it was Queen. Nobody, we all thought, Queen, George Michael,
yeah,
they were played on
yeah,
R&B stations just like anybody else.
Boy
So,
George. Yeah,
yeah, oh my God, you couldn't have told me that Another One Bites the Dust was not by Black people. Like that was, it's what I heard every day. I
yeah.
think the other thing, just to make a little quick segue, that came out this week or last week, um, was the trailer for the new Good Times animated spinoff. We haven't talked about it, but it just came
No,
across.
I don't know if I want to talk about it. I
I
don't know if
gotta
I want
talk
to watch
about
it.
it. I gotta talk about it because I love Seth MacFarlane's work. I watch Family Guy. I've quoted
Oh,
Peter
I didn't
Griffin
know he
on.
was behind it.
Yes, he and Steph Curry are are
That's
producing.
what they're working on. I didn't know it was a good time. I knew they were working together. I didn't know what it was.
So what makes it problematic, and I think this is why they have it timed this way, is that this year marks the 50th anniversary of Good Times. Um,
Mm,
and so in my other life, that I do as a director of the Jackson Film Festival, we're celebrating Good Times and the work of Norman Lear. And so there's a lot of and of course Good Times, even in those 6 seasons, um, did a lot for the culture. A lot of people they find it problematic because it's set in Cabrini Green projects and all of that. But it is a special moment for a lot of us who grew up watching even in rerun Good Times.
mhm.
So for this, if you've seen the trailer.
A little bit. So I'm gonna let
What
some people.
feeling
I don't
made
have
you?
Netflix. I'm waiting for about 10 days until the upshaws come back for me to renew the most basic package of Netflix, and Imma get it in all between April 16th and May 16th and cancel it.
Netflix is just really go too far. Um, but I think it pulls on the worst stereotypes of of what Good Times was completely against. It is just,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be this
That's
new
why
generation.
I didn't wanna
You don't want to talk.
I didn't
I'm
wanna
sorry.
listen. I didn't wanna listen. I didn't wanna look at it. And even my
Right.
favorite actress, Yvette Nicole Brown, she's so sweet. And she responded to one of my IG one of my IG comments on her post.
Oh well.
I saw her she's voicing one of the characters. I'm not even sure
Yeah.
which one. But she like I heard her case for it. I'm
Okay.
still not sold on it.
And what was her case? Because I didn't see it.
That it was that it's still like it's the very opposite of what you said. It's taking the principles and applying it to modern day. It's still about a family who grows up in poverty trying to make it.
With a drug dealing
I'm
baby.
paraphrasing her.
With a drug dealing baby. With a
I
drug.
didn't.
I don't.
I'm just saying. I heard it. I'm not sold on it. This is what she said.
So I find I get that, and I also understand that actors have to work, right? This is
Yeah.
particularly our actors. I'm not, but conceptually, it is highlighting what we've always sort of known about Seth MacFarlane's work, and that um it's the presumption of allyship, which is problematic in itself. But a drug dealing baby, um, even as a generation of, because remember now, you gotta remember that it ends when they get out. So how did they get back in? I'm trying to understand. It ends when they get out. Now, if you want to take it higher, then talk about being middle class and what those issues are. That,
Yeah.
but
Or
they got
gentrification,
out.
like you pre-gentrification of a place.
Exactly. I really think
Yeah.
that they just didn't. I think they missed the mark, and this is the time to say, let's go back and do it again. You missed the mark, and that's okay. It sort of segues
I don't
in.
want to do it again.
I don't.
I would okay, so I would rather I don't know where this is at, if it was a rumor, if it happened or I missed it. They're supposed to reboot the Boondocks. Give me that.
Yeah, yeah,
Give me that. I,
yeah.
yeah. Uh,
But this.
Reboots, I don't know which reboot. There's very few reboots that work for me. CSI Vegas,
Mhm,
they did it well. That's the
mhm.
only reboot that I can think of off the top of my head that has gone. Oh, Sex in the City
Okay.
has gone really well because they knew how to take the principles of it
Mhm,
and port it into the future. So I that's like one of the few shows that I enjoy. Now I just watch TV for comfort because I want
mhm.
to escape. But that's
Right.
one of the fewer shows that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see the Upshaws.
Mhm,
Good, it's not a reboot, but it's a good depiction of where we are now with a black
mhm.
family
Right,
that does not make us caricatures.
right.
It's very real. It's not the Cosbys. It's not like it's very true, and that's why I love the Upshaw so much because the
Mhm,
writing is good, the storyline is relatable, it's not
mhm.
over the top. It's like you watching your auntie, your uncle, and your first cousins. I don't
Right.
want to. I don't want them to go back and try it again. Try it on somebody else. And I
Well,
do like Seth MacFarlane.
I also, and I do. We quote the Family Guy. I tell people all the time they'd be very smart to watch Family Guy. I just don't think that he was the animator for this. I don't know why it had to be animated. But if you're going to do it,
It's the cheapest
you
route.
have to do it with some fidelity.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, um, I just I was appalled. I was already nervous, but now I'm appalled and a little insulted. I'm a little insulted because would you give Archie Bunker um a racist? Like, would you do that to Archie Bunker?
I feel
Would
like
you?
that's already kind of, and I'm not. I might be wrong, but I'm okay. King of the Hillish. Like
Mm.
I feel like he's done that.
Well,
Maybe
no,
he just
so
got the balls to do. No, he was no, he was
he
King
didn't
of the
do
Hill
he
was
didn't do
his.
King of the Hill. That King of the Hill was Mike Judge, but and I get that Family Guy is sort of this play on All in the Family, right? But there's something, but it's
Everybody gets it. Nobody escapes
but he
Family
didn't,
Guy, which I
right?
can dig it.
Yeah, but he didn't call it a reboot of All in the Family. Like it's Peter
Yeah,
Griffin, it's not Archie Bunker. We're talking, it. This is Good Times, and
yeah,
when you understand the backstory of Esther Rose saying, "I'm not doing this show without a husband. I'm not doing this as a single parent. She's fighting for
yeah,
a family unit." Um, that this was a family in the projects, but not of the projects, understanding that their son is an artist and supporting that work, um, making sure that the daughter had the strong father figure, right? Shout out to Philip
yeah.
Michael Thomas on his episode Sexual Behaviors of the Ghetto, in his thesis, talking about a master's thesis in Good Times. Um, and Michael wanting to be the first Black Supreme Court justice, or being an attorney. That, and then we go from that. I can't get past the drug dealing baby. You might as
Yeah.
well have given him a talking bear like you did in Cleveland, the Cleveland show, or the fact that Brian, the Griffin's dog, is actually racist and was barking at Dr. Dre. So let's just, you know, let's just call it what it is. Go back and do it again. Do something else.
Or don't.
Or don't.
Don't.
Do something else. Or don't. Okay.
Uh so before we jump, well, this story, the two stories that we had planned, the two other things we want to talk about is Did he do it?
Oh. Uh-huh.
And Nickelodeon, which I feel like it's gonna be on our news feed because I just saw. I
Yeah.
didn't even watch. I haven't even watched the documentary.
I
One of
have.
my friends said it was hard to watch and get through.
Mhm.
Nickelodeon was my jam though, and I hate like this new story that popped up yesterday or this morning is Mark Summers.
Mhm.
That's his
Mhm.
name. The
Yeah.
creator of mostly everything on Nickelodeon, of how he walked out. I don't even know what that was about, but I feel like when his name was brought up, and I was like, oh man, it just gave me another reason not to delay watching it because it's just like you just
Yeah. Well,
picking at
it was it
my
was like,
childhood.
yeah, I know. I mean, I hate to cut you off. It was his interview, he was the host. But Dan Schneider, who was the producer, was the one, kind of, and creator, was the one manipulating everything behind the
Mark
scenes.
Summers had a lot to do when you go back and like look at it. He produced a lot of it, a lot of things. He was a producer on things for Nickelodeon, things that he wasn't a host for.
It might have been.
So I feel
So,
like he may have known a whole lot more.
yeah, and then he felt ambushed in a way. I
Yeah.
watched it, but they were really focusing on Dan Schneider, who it amazed me because last time, I wasn't in the Nickelodeon generation. I knew it was on. I mean, with the younger crowd, since I'm just a slight because it wasn't something I watched regularly. Um, because that was, yeah, I was in high
You're
school,
more
baby.
MTV VJ. I watched that too.
I
My
was
sister
right. I
probably
was
should
downtown
not
Judy
have.
Brown.
I was
I
in
was
between MTV and Nickelodeon.
I was when
That's why I straddle X and I
those
straddle
videos.
Millennial.
They played videos on MTV and VH1 and the box. We had the box.
Yeah.
So yes, I was very much downtown Judy Brown. Um the but the idea that behind the scenes these things were happening, and when they went back and looked at some of those clips I don't know how some of the parents didn't see it or didn't want to do something. And there's one young man whose mother did, and of course he was Black. And She said, I felt so bad because I think I got him fired because I was saying something like, no, we're not doing this. And he's been angry. It's like, well, he should be thankful now because it saved him a lot of heartache. But some of those things, and I think it's calling up a
Therapy
lot.
sessions.
Hmm.
I said a lot of heartache and therapy sessions.
Yes, definitely. It's really sad. And we look at some of the outcomes of some of those kids um, who had promising careers, and this just were like lambs for slaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really bad. And then of course, then we got at the same time, you got Nickelodeon coming out, and then you've got all of the surviving Diddy and Twitter and TikTok are undefeated. I
Yeah.
undefeated.
Yeah.
I just now
Yeah.
I just
It's
woke up.
like the 90s and the 99 and the 2000s is you grow up and you realize it wasn't as glamorous
No, it was not.
as you thought.
It was a different world for real. Um, it's now they're using AI to recreate scenes from New Jack City. I saw one where they superimposed Jay-Z's face on Ice-T in the courtroom scene. Diddy is Nino Brown. I mean, it's hilariously sad. It really it really is.
It
It's hilarious.
is, but at the core of it,
Yeah. At the core,
uh,
we've
at
gotta
the
we've gotta
core,
deal with it. We've gotta deal with some of those issues, and now when they're looking at some of the tapes of Justin Bieber and how uncomfortable he was with the hypersexualization of him, it and he's visibly uncomfortable, and no one
yeah,
says, we've gotta handle
yeah,
and take care of our kids a little bit better than this.
yeah, yeah. Well, more on Diddy later. I have all of my I just a lot of big pieces people were missing.
Mhm.
We Kathy had been told us that she was going to the Fed, so I don't know why people thinking this little ride lawsuit was. I feel like the stuff in Little Ride lawsuit is not even true, but
Mm,
and I'm like, why are y'all focusing this much when the light skinned girl over here with the $33 million or however much she got is
mhm,
silently like,
mhm.
we told y'all this.
We told you.
We
We told
told y'all this. And
you.
why would a civil case lawyer give a statement and said justice is gonna come? That's all they said. And I'm like, Cassie Ben told y'all that I sent this stuff to the feds. I got mine.
Yeah.
He's gonna get his on the other side.
Well, but I also think, all these people who come out and say, "We saw this, we saw that, we saw this." Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? But you got your check. You're like that. That is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Um.
And it's the NDAs have limitations. Like it's not a I can't say nothing, I'm gonna sue you. Well, you sue me and I'm gonna say why are you suing me for real? What you trying to keep me from saying. But I get it. It's
An NDA cannot
yeah.
cover criminal activity. It cannot
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It
cover
has
criminal activity.
limitations, but the way I think the things are true, I can't. So we'll have to get on a conspiracy theory in the next episode. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I I think some things we were swatting away that said these people was crazy is coming true. I definitely think that people like Al B. Sure and other people will shine a light on that whole era how things were moving and working back then.
Yeah.
And that is going to hurt the 90s baby so much. It's
Yeah.
gonna be unreal. Like
Those are
it's a lot. But
into
we
our.
can go about that.
Okay.
So let's get to our main news segment.
Okay.
Go back inside. We was outside, now we back inside.
All right.
Um So, in our because you don't have time or money to read the Chronicle segment, I found an article that was very interesting. So, I think you'll find a theme in all your news feeds, timelines, discussions about DEI and politics. That's all we talking about these days. But there was the article that I found interesting, and it was titled "A Campus Where Everyone is Just Like You," and they highlight. Uh, is it Brandeis? You're the academician on here.
It's Brandeis.
BR Brandeis.
Mhm.
Okay, I thought so. See, I'm smart. They highlight that Brandeis really uh stood on business as we mix in. I hate that phrase, but they really stood on their brand and said, "Hey, all Jewish students are welcome here." They pushed back against anti-Semitism, and they talk about, is this the wave of colleges as DI is going to be stripped? More colleges are probably going to be monolithic.
Mhm.
And they also juxtapose it, which I thought was interesting, against HBCUs and how enrollment applications went up after the racial reckoning of
Mhm.
George Floyd, and now the repeal of affirmative action. My question is, it should institutions start to think like startup companies or companies in identifying their target audience and just let it be what it is?
Uh, You asking me? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because, and I think HBCUs really need to um, pivot their marketing and say, listen, if these institutions don't want you there, leave, come home. Because there was a time when there were no options. And so what
Yeah.
is being made very clear is that um, they really don't care about if you feel included, if there is equity, if you can graduate from an institution of higher learning, not having one faculty member or staff member look like you, then that's a problem. And so it became even more of an issue. We should allow this to backfire the way it should backfire. And stop playing the respectable game of, yes, come here because we have this wonderful program in business. But no, tell the truth. They if these states in particular. So in the aftermath of George Floyd, which is going to lead into other things, when the Tennessee legislature pulled Glenda Glover in to discuss the fact that her enrollment had increased when UT Knoxville's had decreased in terms of their Black population. She said, basically was like, HBCUs are experiencing a renaissance. You didn't call me in here when we were low, right? So you want the bodies, but you don't want the
And the
responsibility
money.
and the money,
You want
but
the
you want
bodies and the
the
money.
responsibility of making them feel at home, and that's a problem. They live there,
That
and I
is a
think
problem.
and I think that is HBCUs are at an opportunity right now. Yeah, I would track that. You're going to go over the DEI tracker, but I would use that to say, okay, well, we need to go target students in that area right now because that's where the fight is.
Yeah. I hope so. HBCUs are not in every state,
Hmm.
right? There's some you can you can probably tell me where. I know they're mostly concentrated in the South, s-
Hmm.
Southeast. Um, but what about the students who can't get to HBCU? I do hope and pray that some of these institutions are going to fight back against, at least there's at least one state institution in every state. And even that presents a barrier to low income students trying to get back there.
Mm-hmm.
maybe more than one, in every state that fights back against all the DEI rhetoric and stand on the brand of we welcome everybody here, just for the sake of the low income minority student who can't get to HBCU. I hope there's a place or multiple options for students to go where they can know clearly that I'm respected here. Let everybody else, whatever you want to do, that's your brand, to have 80, 90% white
Mm-hmm.
students and another 10% international, because you can't cut them out. You definitely
So they
can't
can
cut out
go right.
international because that's what
Mhm.
you build your budget on.
Right.
I hope that if we come to this place, that somebody has enough sense, some board, some schools have enough sense to say, we need diversity and we need to support it and we need to stand on it and be loud about it.
Well, here's the thing. And I get that. I mean, I think that's yes. But I think HBCUs in this moment can capitalize on their racism. And so there are
Mhm.
programs like the California Community College Initiative where they want to send kids to HBCUs. So there are HBCU graduates in
Yeah.
every state, right? So it doesn't matter if they can't get to it or if they don't see it on a daily basis. That's what fly them. I mean, they have those moments because I didn't have when I was getting ready to go to college in the 1900s. Um, they they people laugh when I say that, which is true. I didn't do a visit to Georgetown. I applied to Georgetown, did not go there. Um, but I didn't do a visit. I had an alumni interview in Jackson.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so having an alumni interview was just as good. I got dressed up. I went to their home. I had my interview. And I was accepted, blah blah blah. They gave a good report. Um, but we can still capitalize. Why are we sending why are you sending your children to a place that clearly doesn't want to support them in their becoming, not just in their academics, not just but in their becoming human beings, right?
Yeah.
So, and if we don't have that, then HBCUs need to capitalize on those kind of programs. There are some foster care states that support, even in foster care, smart kids who are having bad situations, and HBCUs can capitalize on that, and then bring
Yeah.
these kids in, um, and love them and support them. Because why? Because we have assigned a prestige to the PWI. How many HBCU alums, say, well, oh, my child is going to this college because it has some kind of prestige to it. But then they're broken when they get there. The statistics will all tell you that students that graduate from HBCUs have better life outcomes and self satisfaction than those students who go to predominantly white institutions. It'll
Yeah.
also tell you that of the 100, well, I used to say 107, 105, look, depending on accreditation, um, issue with HBCUs, we still provide the foundational degrees for most doctors, lawyers, and engineers, and anyone, and PhDs, and all of those. Those 105 institutions still do more than the rest of the 4,100
Yeah.
4,000 institutions for African American students. But we bought into this prestige. Okay, you don't want to have diversity and equity and inclusion offices. You want to get rid of all that goodwill. It's only been 4 years. You couldn't take it for 4 years. You couldn't take it for 4 years, right? I mean, come on. Send them. Yeah, as folks say, come on home, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was the interesting out of all the other stuff
Yeah.
in there. I thought that was an article that struck me
Mhm.
as interesting. So next on in our news you can and cannot you may and can use. Transitions in and out. We have to be we're gonna need full transparency, we're gonna need some work in this area. If you keep following us long enough, you'll see why. But what do we want to talk about in transitions? There's a lot. There's a
Well,
lot
yeah,
of transitions.
this is the moment where everybody is getting the notice that they're not coming back, or they're leaving, or the searches. What we found in the most tragic news of higher ed, found no bullying on the part um, of the president of Lincoln University, that that led to the tragic death of the VP of Student Affairs at that institution, who she named in her note. We've talked about it. It's he's back. Like, I'm trying to understand that. I don't know what to say.
I couldn't believe it.
I really don't understand. Um, Even for optics, why that is still a thing. Um, and why he so it's also problematic. I know I'm kind of beating around the bush. It's also problematic because as an HBCU, at least on the books, um, that they have promoted the athletic director, who had been the athletic director and basketball coach, to the presidency. I'm gonna say that
That
again.
was an issue for me. And I've seen some football coaches. I can recall the football coach in my high school team. If he was anything like that, no, indeed. My classmate couldn't take, like, he was, long story short, I can't, I'm not saying nobody can. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
But with no training and with no coaching, no executive coaching to put you there. He could. I don't know the politics there. You know it got to be politics, but you skip over provost, you skip over deans, you skip over. I mean, even a chief of staff these days can a special assistant has become president.
Mm-hmm.
I, I and we're going to get to board governance in a minute. That's our main. That's the topic of our main segment. But
Right.
how
It's
with
all organic.
nothing,
Yeah.
and it's not bullying. Like, oh, you so like color purple bully, you so ugly. You so it's not that type of bullying. So if you were
Right.
going, if the investigator was saying, well, did they say anything? Did he demean you? No, it's not that type. It's psychological bullying when you
Mm-hmm.
withdraw all of our basic needs. There's no security. There's no positive feedback, there's constructive feedback, there's being made to look crazy time and time again. It's the gaslighting day in and day out. That is bullying. That is psychological bullying. And if they were, I don't know what they were measuring, what their measuring stick was it, did
Mm-hmm.
he hit you, did he invade your personal space? Did he threaten you? Did, like, if you we asking those questions, no, is they're
Yeah.
not going to find bullying. But redefine it in terms of psychological safety. We've been in those places
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's adult bully. It's not the playground bullying. It's not
Um,
you ugly, you fat. It's
I'd
the
rather you hit me
you
sometimes.
incompetent. Yeah.
Mhm. It's like in a marriage where there is abuse. Physical abuse we all understand, right? You hit me, I'm gone, right? That or wait, but the emotional abuse is the most insidious, because you lead yourself to question it. Did he say? Did he mean? Did she mean? And in the workplace, it's even worse, because something is your livelihood is being dangled, your
Yeah.
professionalism is being questioned, your humanity is at risk. And having been in a sort of in that kind of toxic environment, um you have to wonder, uh, what questions, yes, as you said, what questions did you all ask, and did you ask them in such, was it given, were they asked, or were the right people asked? So sometimes you can ask, you know exactly what you're doing when you're stacking an investigation, right?
Yeah.
And who
Yeah.
are you asking, and who do you put? And so I think that's why the National Alumni Association of Lincoln has asked and called for the resignation of the entire board. Um,
I signed the petition.
and so the fact that we're talking about it, right? You
I
signed
signed that petition.
exactly, and so you're talking about the and so the team mentality, the rah rah, it's not the coach mentality, is to push, 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 right?
And this,
Um,
let me preface that some coaches are good
yeah, some
at
coaches are.
that motivation. I would even give, if you gonna move somebody from that, move a Deion Sanders. I'll give you that.
Hmm.
But at least he's showing some, he has that that the to inspire,
Yeah.
not conspire. And I think it was a lot of conspiracy and
Hmm.
manipulation and gaslighting that was going on. Like when we'll post that our first unofficial episode as a bonus on the podcast, where you can hear us dissect this whole issue. We heard the letter. We could eat
Easily
any
have
one
written
of
it
us,
ourselves. Hmm.
and I knew exactly word, sentence for sentence, line for line, exactly what she meant. And I've never met this woman a day in my life or even heard about Lincoln. And that's the crazy part for me. Anybody
Hmm.
who's in a toxic environment, who's worked for someone like that, could have written that letter.
Yes, and we
So I
literally
can't
grew
believe
through it
he's
today.
back. And I don't know. Is it a professional improvement plan? Is he on a PIP?
I don't. he needs he needs to be on the unemployment line, but it's no, I don't know.
At
I
the
think
very least, a PIP.
they no, but they said they found no no evidence that he had been bullying, so there's no need uh for a pimp. There's none of that, and the fact that this is a white male at an HBCU, and to be fair, and to her, in her memory, that she's an alum of this institution. So going in as an alum who has worked, and I am an alum who has worked for my alma mater, that there's a different moral imperative, because you stand as this sort of um liaison between your memories and your present, and you're trying to do everything that you can. And it sounds like, even from her letter, she was doing everything that she could to help her alma mater, because the alma mater meant so much to her. She talks about that in her letter. Again, we could have written that, in terms of the
Yeah.
toxicity, and I definitely could have written that portion, like, you give it all, you give it your all, and then for them to say, even in optics, there's no, to bring him back, there was no evidence of bullying. Clearly, for her to go to such extreme, and of her to feel that level of hopelessness,
And for
something.
my, yeah, from my wellness, well-being side,
Hmm.
like I tell students, it's so easy to fail in college. It is very easy to fail.
Hmm.
Um, it's very easy to get to that place.
Yeah.
Once you, it's not like a sleep deprivation, like, oh, I didn't get sleep last night. You can be in such a deprivation from sleepless night after night after night, year after year after year. You're not eating, you're not drinking water, you're not taking time out. There's no separation of work and life.
Right.
You can easily find yourself in that dark place. You just keep it's either walking straight into a dark place, or you're digging yourself deep, deep and
Hmm.
deep into a dark place where you feel like all of your options are just removed.
Right.
It's very easy to get to that place, and it's not even a self-care thing
Hmm.
anymore. It is a soul care thing at that problem.
Yeah.
It eats away at your soul
Hmm.
when you have been reduced. and this has been your life, this is your home, there's no way out. So yeah. um
I think,
look,
and I think we've all had that moment. And I can tell you
yeah,
one of the moments that I had. I was in the copy room, and I was so tired, and it wasn't even a tired. It was a weary, right? It was a I don't know how much I'm holding on to the paper thing that's in the island, the paper island that's in the middle of the floor. And I realize that I'm holding on because I feel so weary and my flesh is trembling. And I said, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore."
yep,
Um, and that was a moment for me, like when people say you're not eating, you're not doing, that that higher ed work is difficult work, especially if you want to do it well, right? And you want to do good and you want to do well. But when you get to the point, as I heard with her, when you get to that in that letter, when you get to the point of weary, of complete and utter despair, um, and to feel like that you're not even being seen, then there's no way, even in optics, even if you thought that you put, that she was exaggerating, clearly she wasn't. But when you get to that point, even optics, y'all need to send, you can't reseat him in the height of power, as if that was okay, that somebody on your watch went home and took their lives
yep.
and named you in the letter. Like, there's no way you could do that. What kind of, I don't know what the board is thinking. They
I
we
think
found
they still gaslighting a woman that's not even here on this earth. They still
right.
gaslighting us in her.
Hmm.
And yeah. So let's say, speaking of board governance, we'll save the rest of our topics for the next episode because we're still sure. I am confident that the financial aid delay is still reverberating. It's gonna be reverberating next week.
Yes, and as someone whose grandson is waiting on financial aid and trying to get that out, um, it's a horror. It is a horror. So yes, it will still be a horror next week. Uh, Financial aid
And
and
yeah,
student loan forgiveness,
legislation. Yep.
it-
Yep.
and student loan forgiveness will still be a horror next week.
Yeah. As well as DEI will still
Ah,
be
yes.
a thing. So, our main segment, we want to talk about the intersectionality, the twists and tangles, the knots,
Mm-hmm.
the mangled, the mangled, incestuous
Yeah.
mess of board governance and politics.
Mm-hmm.
I,
You seem at a loss for words. I don't know why.
I am. It's a lot because look, at first in our show notes, it was the TSU story, but then um Louisiana want to act up, and uh, a,
Yes.
a day, less than 24 hours of us talking about. So this,
Mm-hmm.
it boggles my mind. We're talking about board governance, how you can replace, how you can send the president back after investigating the situation. But
Mm-hmm.
then, as another layer to it, you're not only governed by the board, you have a whole, if you're at a state institution, you have
Mm-hmm.
a whole nother set of people you got to answer to.
Right.
I, I think God saved us from being college presidents in this time.
Yes.
I need
Yes.
a few more gray hairs to take this, to actually ask to be in a role. I don't know what in my mind made me think that I wanted any parts of this. I'd rather watch from the sidelines. So that's what we're doing.
Well, well, I also, I don't think that our brand of leadership is different. We actually care about what we do. boards have a unique responsibility. They only have one employee, and that is the CEO, the president. They only have one employee. Unfortunately, it seems like they have several, and that's where you get into a quagmire. Um, that's
Well, let's go back to the nitty gritty. And I didn't get this. I knew it. You know how you can know something, but seeing black and white in a different context. So after I left higher ed, I went to a nonprofit
mm-hmm,
in a nonprofit organization who actually had who offer services to higher ed institutions. And I was sitting in one of their executive director trainings, and we were talking about the problem with nonprofits,
mm-hmm,
right? And they went all the way back to what is a nonprofit. Nonprofit is an organization that belongs to the public for public good, higher
mm-hmm,
education, nonprofit institutions, and then for public good.
mm-hmm,
The hallmark of a nonprofit institution is the board, and there's a she gave a great analogy which always sticks. The board, if you have a dance floor, two-story club venue, there's a dance floor, and
mm-hmm,
then you go up some stairs and there's a balcony. The board is on the balcony, the
mm-hmm.
chief is on the dance floor. The board is supposed to fiduciary duty is to make sure that the organization is still doing good for the public and is living by the mission. And because it is the money and everything that goes in it is for the good of the public, they need to make sure that it's not mismanaged.
Right.
But there's a separation that the board can't come down to the dance floor. You
Mm-hmm,
have to remain up and separated. And the CEO and the chief and the staff are on the dance floor. The dance floor is mine as CEO. You stay up there. Don't
mm-hmm,
come down here messing with me. You stay up there. And so when you have this the problem where people want to come to the dance floor and then run back up when stuff gets real,
mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
make laws where you don't listen to the people who are on the dance floor, that's where the issue comes along. And so board governance is super important. I'm like, do they explain this? Can the do board members get this lesson? Do they get the dance floor lesson on their
That
first day in office, or what do they do? Like, what does this look like?
I think between the politics, particularly for state institutions, I think the politics of so states do it differently. One state may have one board for all institutions, and then another state every institution has a board, but they're still under the purview of the state legislature, right? And then they have a
Yeah.
secondary overall, the board of the boards, and then the board of the boards that is run by the legislature. It's all convoluted. Um, but no, I don't
How
think
do
they
I
do.
want I want to do a trace of how we got here. Like, what's the history of this?
Right. That is something that would take that's a whole dissertation uh to try to figure out. But I think that all boards and board members are supposed to go to training, right? um and there's several board training mechanisms. I said, but but after they sit in the meetings and they go, oh yes, yes, sure, we won't do that, and yes, we only have one employee, and no, that, and then they come home, and then reality is, well, what are y'all doing with this and this and this and this, and we don't understand this, and the people in the streets say, if I hear the people in the streets or the street committee one more time, um because a lot of your board members that are appointed are either in business, healthcare, very few, I think, if you go back and look at some of these board people, are not in higher ed. They have no clue about higher ed and how things work, and what it takes to get there. And so everybody wants a lot of students, and yet when you're going after a lot of students and let's say enrollment, but if you don't provide wraparound services to help all the students, I can get your bodies.
Yeah.
But if I don't, but if your imperative is only to get bodies, and you're not telling, and you're telling me But I'm telling you, okay, so this is what we need to help these students graduate, because on the back end of that, to have them understand this is a retention rate, this is a graduation rate, and if you let them in and you charge them and you don't graduate them, then your default loan rate, uh, it, it so you have to explain and educate them on higher ed, because you don't have a lot of higher professionals, um, or even secondary ed, right? Who are on these boards. Then you have to explain some basics and have vision, um, for that. And then they have to make sure that the employee that they hire, is a good one. Which, yeah,
That's a different measuring. That's the same thing as what are they measuring this by? I want
yeah,
to go back to when you said there's not a lot of higher ed.
mm,
Let's go back just in case there's some young professionals listening, people who haven't thought about this, but I want everybody needs to know why things are this way,
mhm,
especially when you think about coming to a leader, just say a director or lower levels of management. When you come up to them and you ask why this and why that, you can
right,
have an explanation of what they got up top.
mhm,
So the reason why we'll stick with state institutions don't have a board that reflects the knowledge of inside as well as outside is because the governor seats,
mhm,
many states are is where the governor seats the board. Now there's different ratios. The reason we put this on today that we're getting to is
mhm,
Texas State University.
mhm,
I think they have an 8 to 10 rule. The governor is allowed to seat 8, and they have uh I think the president can seat 2, or there's 2. I don't know if that's like faculty, staff, senate type thing. A
mhm,
faculty rep, a senate rep that fills a student rep fills it. I'm not sure. Everybody is different, but in general, the
mhm,
governor has the ability to seat and unseat a board. Now we've seen how this works for the good and
mhm,
for the bad.
mhm,
The reason, so you think about the board, think about politics. The
right,
governor has favors.
exactly, exactly.
Sitting on boards of college institutions is glamour.
Oh
Because
yes,
I've been
oh
because
yes,
I've been an ED and a CEO, that's not the if you're a good board member, it's not glamorous work.
mhm. It's
But for
hard,
some reason,
right?
yeah, the bigger institutions, I don't know if it's especially like the SEC and Pat, like I don't know if it's access to athletics. I don't know what it is. I want to be on a board to influence policy, but other people may want, so they're in the government. So governors now, if they are that type of politician, says, I now have to honor these requests of my friends and patrons and constituents who donated to me.
Mhm,
And these are how these people get placed. Now they may line up with some expertise. You may get a general counsel, you may get a innovative businessman, you may get somebody who can um and it's not like they're bringing millions to the university. They might have somebody who can broker partnerships, college business partnerships. That may be true, but at the source of it, anybody who petitions and the governor favors can be set on a board, and
mhm,
nobody, the institution or the president, have any power over who sits in that seat. So
right.
that brings us to, oh, go ahead.
And so for private institutions, those boards are voted on internally. And so people are recommended, or they give a donation, or whatever the slot opens up. And so they have a little bit more flexibility in how their board members are chosen. However, that's still also, I want my friend on the board, or this person is this, so this person
Yeah,
is that.
yeah, yeah. It's still politics, no matter what. But
So, yeah.
state politics is a different thing in this era.
Uh,
So there was places in Kentucky, where the governor had to reseat it because there was so much turmoil going on for years and years and years, of two universities. We
Mm-hmm.
won't be specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where they had to come in and reseat a board for good or for bad. I think it was for good, both situations.
Right.
However, Tennessee State University's governor,
Mm-hmm.
this is an attack on HBCUs, but it's also a picture perfect of how your vote matters in
Yes.
every situation. And I would hope every higher ed professional goes out to vote and they understand this part. Maybe not, but this is the conversation we're having today.
Mm-hmm.
Your vote matters because the governor has so much power over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Louisiana has a new governor, and just as TSU has disrupted the board and put in another 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. So we need to dig a little bit deeper of like who's on the board. There's some alum from TSU on the board. I don't know the ratio. There are some, so that take care of the optics part. But the governor put who he wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
his bidding. And
Right.
so Louisiana, new governor, nobody voted, nobody black voted, nobody
Mm-hmm.
Democrat voted to even push it to a runoff. We got a new governor in the primary, and he has been crazy. But to drop down another level from the governor, Louisiana, as of 48 hours ago, there's a bill on the floor, possibility of giving the governor more power to place. So Louisiana doesn't, state universities don't have on boards, they have system boards. So there's 3 major systems in Louisiana, four, I'm sorry, counting the community college system, 4 major systems in Louisiana, and the fifth with the Board of Regents is the state higher education, um, higher education, and I don't want to say enforcement, but policy piece. So that's six. Is that six? I said
Mm-hmm.
five. 5 major board seats. So this is how easy it can be. Things in higher ed can go south, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Your representative has a max number of bills they can sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no slots to fill, anybody can fill it, and they'll say, "Hey, okay, I got 5. Let's just fill it." Right. So what has happened in Louisiana, that somebody with a lot of money, a lot of power, who's on a Louisiana board, Louisiana State University board, let me be specific, got passed up for got passed up to be chair of the board.
Right.
He gets mad. He has money. He has power. Get somebody draft up legislation that gives the governor power to seat board chairs. Now, a little
Mm-hmm.
preview: before the governor was placed, Louisiana system. We're so convoluted over here. The Louisiana board, which is everybody minus LSU. LSU got their own, everybody minus Southern. So
Mm-hmm.
Grambling, ULL, Southeastern, everybody, all of those are in one. The
Mm-hmm.
Grambling president at the time gets the position to be the board president of Louisiana system.
Okay.
His confirmation is placed on hold by the new governor days after he's in office. He said, "Oh, I just, it's just every governor needs to know who's sitting in these seats. So I just wanted to check." He eventually gets approved, but it was a
Right.
checkmate to say, "I got the power to stop some stuff." So he had paused his confirmation. Everybody held their breath. Something happened. He goes on about his business. But now this bill goes up because some legislature didn't have had some slots to fill, moves it in, puts it on the floor. He gets calls. He didn't read the bill. He just sponsored it and pushed it up. He gets calls that this is crazy. Everybody in higher ed who has something to say is like, you cannot give a governor this much power.
Right.
And so the power would be that all the board chairs would be under his purview. And this governor that we have, that's a really bad thing for policy, for low
Right.
income minorities.
Mm-hmm.
He
DEI, all of that.
that's Yeah, everything would go down the drain as we're fighting for our lives, like R. Kelly. For my life. We fight for life down here. Um, that would be bad. But it was so easy. It's so easy, right? It's so easy to have that happen
Like,
because we don't vote and we don't know the power of our voice.
and here's the thing, and ultimately, you got to make sure you're voting for people who are going to read the bills that they support.
That's a good question.
Right? You got to, you can't slide something in there. I remember when I was a provost and somebody tried to slip something by me because they thought I was so busy that I would just be signing my name and I wouldn't recognize things for paperwork. And I was like, oh, no, no, no. You're not going to undercut this person for the same job and you're paying them this other person $7,000 more for the same job, and this person is more highly degreed, because they thought I wouldn't catch it. You got to be able to read and be willing to take the time to read the bill. Don't make the bill so convoluted that it's 150 pages and think I'm not going to read it. I'm going to read it. Right?
Yeah.
And you got to vote for people, and we have to teach our children and our students to go vote and why it's important, not just on the local. We push presidential elections all the time. We got one coming up. I actually use that as a day off. Go vote. Make sure I work it into my syllabus. This is the day you need to go vote. Can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you to vote, and I can only hope that they do the right thing. But you cannot give any one person that much power. In the case of Tennessee, what they have, if you're asking, all of those who were appointed to the board for Tennessee State are all TSU graduates. Okay, but let's go down and lead. I want to talk about. They have one academic on the board, bank president, one provost, vice president for administration at another institution. There's no way in the world he's going. It's no way in the world that person is going to have time to be on a Tennessee State board and be a provost at another institution. But I digress. A consulting firm, a deputy mayor, and director of general counsel, general resources, right? General counsel for somewhere else. A CEO for lead public schools. A president of a manufacturing corporation, and somebody who works in government relations officer at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Like you have an academic who will probably, for the most part, have their board meeting, getting ready for their board meetings for their boss at the same time when somebody else is supposed to be giving a report. That didn't make sense. But you don't have any, that's all business. Like, it's all business.
So
I'm in such confusion.
it's making you itch.
It is. It's like, oh my god, oh my god. No, I think, and if we're not careful, so you have these things. There's what I call a triptych, right? It's a triptych of you're coming after Black academics at predominantly white institutions in leadership positions, talking about they plagiarize. This is a playbook, right, to get rid of DEI. Yeah. See, look, right? So you got this going on at the same time. Tennessee owes Tennessee State University $2 billion, with a B, $billion in $1 billion in funding. And so this is a way to control that, right? At the same time that they're going through a presidential search. So you have a new board, so you have no continuity. Something is bound to go wrong. You have done so many audits on Tennessee State that you have not done on other institutions. There has been no
and they have not found anything.
Not anything, right? To say that there has been a problem. And I can't imagine that there would be. Glenda Glover has both a PhD, a law degree, and a CPA. Like, really, folks. And so when you have this kind of political game going on in these times, if this is not a reason to go vote, it's not a reason for HBCUs to capitalize on clearly the systemic racism within higher ed and this country. If y'all can, if y'all y'all need to take a page out of Beyonce's playbook and reclaim your time.
And and the crazy thing is that just popped in my mind. I know state workers have this ethical law or ethical policy in place where you can only lobby so much. So it handicaps you, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't say nothing about the person who employs you, even though they're doing the most shadiest stuff, or that you need to be vocal about how policies are affecting our daily job to support our students, or your policies are not student centered or anything like that. So we disarm our own selves, because even though I was working at a white state institution,
Mm-hmm.
I had some idea of the law, but I didn't. It took me stepping out and being able in the nonprofit world to talk about policies and lobbying. I got a whole new view of that, because there was nothing we could do. There was no talk. There was no professional development or even conversations around what we can do as advocates as a higher ed professional. There is. You just got to, especially if you work at institution, stay institution, there's a way. But if you don't, you do have the freedom to help shape some state policy, because you never know. Private institutions aren't always immune to that
Mm-hmm.
either.
Right.
So we all have to become more aware, knowledgeable, and a little bit more active. I'm challenging myself to be a little bit more active in advocating and
Mm-hmm.
finding my voice on the state and federal policy level,
Right.
knowing what I know on the ground.
Right. And I think this, when you talk about that phrase on the ground, in the building, like at building level, at boots on the ground, we are right there in the midst of it all, doing the work, and people are making decisions who don't have any clue what the work is.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you
And they're not even, they don't even have the same interests aligned.
right, because it becomes a sort of personal me. Well, it's really ours. And again, it all, or we have to see it, call it what it is. Call, as Ian Van Zant would say, call a thing, and then act accordingly, and advocate and vote and get people in those positions who are going to advocate and fight for our students and our lives. Because what we have to understand is that what we do in secondary and higher education, and particularly that, and even at this point, we're celebrating vocational training and workforce development, is that we are all in the position to transform the lives of an entire family.
Yeah.
We're talking about families and generations, right? And so that's why these things are important. um and I'm a testament that I am not first generation, but my grandmother was. And so that
Mhm.
changes the trajectory of all of us, and even what her nieces saw. And so going to college and making sure that you could survive and support, and support your families. And so all of that goes back to, who are we putting in the positions to assist with that, to do what needs to be done, not for their own self-aggrandizement, but for the people. And that, and I mean, it sounds very corny at this point, but yes, we the people need to go to vote for we the people, right? That is what it is.
Yeah. Um, so that is our main segment. I think to wrap this all up, vote, be knowledgeable about
Mm-hmm.
the bills, even those there's I usually go to websites to break down amendments to make sure I can understand them and I know what I'm voting yes to, because they writing so convoluted that your no's not no's, your no's are yays, and your yays are no's.
Right.
You can't understand them.
Gotta
So
break
make sure you're reading through the amendments. Make sure that if you're at a town hall and in a power, a position to educate people who are running for state legislature, that you know who's on educational committees. If you're running for something, make sure you have a good advisory group on higher education. If you are listening and you may be in a position to get in a board seat, if you have an ear of a board member, it's up to you to educate yourself, to educate them, to make sure they know what's at stake and what needs to happen in the institution. Not being gossipy or messy. Come with your facts, come with your papers. Don't say what the streets say. Give real substance to the people who are in positions of power. And that could be part of your networking goals if you're emerging, or are you looking for some professional development? It starts to network with these people in power so they can get the real news from people who are doing the work. This show, this podcast is to honor the people who are front lines, the advisors, the financial aid people, the faculty, the people who are front lines, especially working in student success, student affairs, who are directly working with our students and see the need, the real need. We want to arm you with some strategies to give yourself some voice, some power in order to properly educate the people who are making decisions at the table. If not, put yourself at the seat of the table. Yeah, it's fun, but when I got my seat, I did what I needed to do. It's scary to find out some stuff, but I think because I did come from the front line and I had no ambitions to be at the table, I had to be, my chair had to be pushed to the table. I was fighting it, I was digging in, but we need people who have a heart for the students and who know what it takes to get a student in and out. We need you at the table. So figure out how to network, professionally develop, policy, advocacy, institutional policy, state policy, federal policies, to get yourself at the table so we can have a well-rounded view when making decisions, big decisions.
Yes.
So we are at the conclusion of this podcast. We will definitely pick up on episode 3 and talking about Didi, Nickelodeon, and DEI. But thank you so much for joining Allegedly Higher. You can visit us. We'll leave our link in the show notes. Or if you're watching a snippet on social media, we want to hear from you. What else do you want us to talk about? What's the news on your street, on your campus? Not gossipy news. Let me preface that. We want to stay out the gossip. But if there's an issue or topic that's going on that needs to be
don't send it to her. Send it to me, child. I'm sorry.
Send your listener. We do have listener questions segment that we'd like to debut in our later episodes. So start sending us those questions if you are early career, aspiring, grad student, faculty, staff. We want to have your questions. We want to definitely have your voice. So please send that to us. We'll put the email in our show notes as well. But as always, we thank you and appreciate you for joining us on this journey, and come back for more on Allegedly Higher. You take care, and we will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. This episode was sponsored by Holistic Higher Ed Solutions, committed to enhancing student success. From coaching to planning, our practitioners empower institutions. Ready to transform? Visit holisticheredsolutions.com and let's revolutionize higher ed together. Be sure to subscribe, review, and join us next time.